representing Richmond is Michelle Molino. Richmond Simpson. Come on. Last but not the least, the most powerful Hon Chen, Richmond Center.
I like the energy.
It is now my great pleasure to stand on here to introduce you to a man who has been fighting for each and every one of you and all British Columbia for the last 2 decades. So without further ado, introducing the next Premier of British Columbia, John Rustad.
Hey guys, hey, you know what? It is great to be here. It is so great to be in Richmond with our candidates. Don't we have great candidates? Are you guys ready to turn Richmond blue? Are you ready to turn British Columbia blue? And I tell you, we're going to do this because we're going to be able to get rid of the drugs. We're going to stop these drug dens from happening in our communities. We're going to end decriminalization. We're going to end safe supply. We're going to make sure that we've got recovery in place. Enough of spreading these drugs all the way through our communities. Because I know Richmond is not interested in having these drug dens in its community. We're going to get rid of the carbon tax. We're going to put $1,200 back into every family in this province. That's a commitment that we're going to do. As soon as the federal writ is dropped, as a Conservative government, we'll make sure that that carbon tax is off, saving every family in this province, like I say, $1,200 a year that they'll be able to save. We're also going to make sure, quite frankly, that we deal with rent and mortgages. Through the Rustad rebate, $3,000 a month of your rent or your mortgage will be able to be written off against your taxes. That'll be about $1,800 a year in savings for people. Between that and the carbon tax, that's almost $3,000 a year that will be saved for the average family. And that will make a huge difference for people. It's the largest tax reduction for housing, for renters, and mortgages in BC's history. We need to make sure that we get our economy going. We need to make sure that people have that opportunity to be able to make a living here. Because we can do a little bit on the taxation, as we mentioned, but we've got to do more in terms of getting the economy going, making sure that we get high wages in this province, making sure that you can build a future in British Columbia. Because at the end of the day, under David Eby, 1 in 3 people are thinking about leaving this province. 1 in 2 youth are thinking about leaving British Columbia because they don't have hope. They've got no way to be able to think about, putting food on the table and paying for their rent. How do they even think about raising a family? And so for what we want to do is make sure that we fire up our economy, make sure that we drive the wage growth that's needed so that people can afford to live here and people can have that hope and prosperity that we want to see from British Columbia. That is something that a Conservative government, we will make sure we deliver that for the people here in Richmond and right across this government, right across this province. But when it comes to our kids, we also have to make sure that we do everything we can in our education system. We have to make sure that we get rid of things like SOGI. We've got to make sure that we deal with our education system to teach kids how to think, not what to think. We have to make sure that our education system is preparing our kids for the future, but also that there is a very solid anti-bullying program in place and support in place for all kids so that everybody can feel comfortable. It's just the right thing to do. And when I hear from university professors and college professors that our kids are not prepared for the future, when I see that we have declining numbers in reading, writing, and arithmetic, and then David Eby has done away with letter grades, enough is enough. We're going to bring back the letter grades. We're going to make sure that our kids are prepared. We're going to make sure that they have all the tools they can to be able to be successful, because it's just the right thing to be able to do. We support families. We want to make sure that kids and families have that opportunity to be able to succeed in British Columbia. Right across this province, we're seeing this. We're seeing people come in and join and be part of this grassroots movement. And at the end of the day, David Eby, we've got a collapsing healthcare system. We have people that can't afford things. We've got drugs on the streets. We've got crime that's running rampant. Enough is enough of what they're doing. David Eby actually, back in a number of years ago, actually said it is okay for people to take their welfare check and to spend the entire thing on going out and buying crack cocaine. I'm sorry. That is just wrong. That is shameful. And you wonder why we have so many problems in there. David Eby supports the protesters, supports these mobs that are on the street that are burning a flag and saying death to Canadians. He actually wrote a handbook. He actually wrote the arrest handbook to help these people. And I wrote a second book saying how to sue the police. This is who we have as a leader in this province. It's absolutely crazy to see what's happened. We're going to make sure, quite frankly, that we are going to bring an end to whether it's anti-Asian hate or whether it's anti-Palestinian hate or Islamophobia or anti-Semitism. We're going to make sure that we bring an end to this sort of hate in British Columbia. People should be able to be safe in this province, no matter who you are, no matter who you love, no matter where your faith is, no matter where you came from. British Columbia is a melting pot of so many different cultures. It is the value that we are as a society. It is why British Columbia is so great, because we have people from all over the world that have come with their culture, with their food. Of course, I love the food. But with so much that has created that fabric that is British Columbia, and it's being torn apart. There's so many divisions that are happening in our society, and it is not right. So a Conservative government will make sure that we have zero tolerance for this in our society. We'll make sure we support people no matter who you are and no matter where you are, because everybody should have that right to live safely and to be able to build a future right here in British Columbia. And to that extent, we have seen way too much crime going on our streets. It's so sad to see when you see these violent crimes, when you talk to businesses that are struggling, so much is walking out the door from these crimes that are happening. Police are telling me that 20% of the criminals are committing 80% of the crimes. Enough is enough. We need to get these people off our streets. So we're going to make sure that we push for guaranteed minimum sentencing, push for bail reform on that side. But what we're going to do within British Columbia is we're going to add to our court system. We're going to add judges and sheriffs. We're going to make sure that we set a separate court system available for these prolific offenders, so that within a week or two, we're going to get these people into court and make sure that that there's consequences for the crimes that they're doing. Enough is enough. These people need to be taken off our streets so that we can have safe communities in British Columbia. There's so much that we need to do. I tell you, there's so many things to talk about. Look, we're going to get homes built in this province. We need to make sure that we actually have housing built. David Eby seems to think that it's only government that does housing and the private sector has no role. I think we need to unleash the private sector. We need to drive out all of the costs and delays, all this bureaucracy that is holding us back. We need to drive that out. We need to work with communities, get the zoning done, and make sure that we can build these homes in British Columbia. I talked to the private sector about this, and they gave me this great big long list of things that we need to work on. And I looked at it and I said, all of these delays is about bureaucracy and process. It's not about actually building quality homes in British Columbia that people can afford to live in. We need to make sure we get back just to the basics, bring common sense in, and get homes built for people in this province. Keep those prices low as low as we can, while our wages and tax relief can catch up, because it's the only way we can deal with these things. But instead, what have we seen under David Eby? We've seen a 1/3 reduction in housing starts in British Columbia just this year alone, at a time when we need to see housing starts double. So enough of that nonsense. We're going to get rid of the government red tape and make sure that we get these homes built for people in British Columbia. Just briefly, I'll tell you what, on healthcare, we're going to make sure that we hire back our healthcare workers. We're going to get rid of any of that sort of nonsense and the mandates. That is going to come to an end. We're going to make sure that we got a provincial health officer in place that's actually going to put people first and make sure that our systems are looked after in this province. But most importantly, our healthcare model has to be putting patients first. We have to make sure that patients matter, not the system. So everything we need to do in this province is going to be focused on that. We have the second most expensive healthcare model in the 30 most advanced nations in the world, and yet we have the second worst outcomes. Enough is enough. We need to change the model. We'll use these models that in Europe that are some of the best in the world. That's how we're going to deliver healthcare for people, so that we can deliver. People will have the ability to be able to get doctors and to be able to have those services that are needed, because patients will come first under a Conservative government. And the question I always get about all of this, and today we released our platform and the costing associated, they always get the cost. How are you going to deal with our deficit? I mean, the NDP have run this province in the ground. They've gone from a $2.7 billion surplus to a $9 billion deficit, the largest deficit in BC's history by a long shot. Even under COVID, when they shut down the entire economy, it was only $5 billion deficit. Today it's $9 billion, and I suspect by the time we get to March, it's even going to be larger than that. So how are we going to deal with this? Well, I tell you, there's only one way we can deal with it, because you cannot go to people and ask for more taxes. And to make sure we don't go back to asking you for more taxes, we're going to pass legislation in place that says there can be no new taxes or no increased taxes except by referendum. We're going to put the power back into the people of British Columbia where it belongs. So to pay for this, to make sure that we get these things done, we have to get our economy going. We have 17 mines in this province that are ready to be opened. Those 17 mines represent a $38 billion investment, will create between 20 and 30,000 jobs at an average wage and benefit of $138,000 a year. But most importantly, by getting these things open, not only will we get the critical minerals we need for the investments in British Columbia, but it will generate approximately just over about $4.2 billion in annual revenue for the government. And that's just the mines alone. When you add in the tertiary and the secondary jobs associated with it and revenues, that alone would eliminate our deficit in British Columbia just by getting our mines going in British Columbia. We've got to get government out of the way. We've got to get these things open. We've got to get our feet back underneath our forest sector. We have opportunities to be able to export natural gas. We need to be able to make sure that we get those things going in BC. But I think probably the best thing that we can do is we need to end this negative environment of British Columbia from this government. We need to get the bureaucracy out of the way so that we can succeed in this province. Because I can tell you, if we can do this, I was asked, what does success look for the Conservative Party of British Columbia? And I said, look, 1 in 2 youth are looking at leaving the province. In 4 years, if we are able to build out what I'm hoping we're going to be able to achieve within government, those youth will not only want to stay in British Columbia, but youth from across this country will look at British Columbia with hope and say, yes, I can build a future there. That is what success looks like. That is what we need to be able to deliver for the people in British Columbia. We have all the resources we could ever want. We have everything going for us as a province. We've got a great population, well-educated, well-trained people. We have the ability to do so much, but we're hopelessly managed. So it's time to bring common sense. We got to get government out of the system, out of this thing. They've got to stop blocking what we're doing. We have to make sure we unleash the potential of the people in this province so that we can see that future. That is what the Conservative Party will deliver for this province. And October 19th, we are going to turn this province blue. Thanks, everybody, for being involved with us. Thanks for the campaign.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Common sense, common sense, common sense, common sense, common sense. Woo! Common sense. Now go vote. Woo! Okay, are you guys ready to turn Richmond and BC blue? Now remember to go vote. 8 p.m. and tomorrow as well. 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Tell your friends, family, and neighbors to go vote, okay? All right, John will be staying around for some photos. I know everybody wants some photos with the